Welcome to the Hobby School podcast. Whether you're a seasoned hobbyist or just getting started, Hobby School is the perfect place to learn something new. My name is Dr. Destiny Kopp, and I'm your host of the podcast. But before we jump into our episode for today, the only thing I ask is that if you enjoyed the episode, please share with a friend and give us an honest review on your favorite podcast platform. This helps us get out the content to more people. I also want to invite you to get on our wait list for our next Hobby School Online Learning Summit. These are free to attend, and you can find the link to join at hobbyschool.com, which is also in our podcast show notes. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. And today, my special guest is Victoria from LaCreativeMama.com, and we're going to be talking about upcycling fabrics and clothes through natural dyeing and eco-printing. Victoria, thank you so much for joining me. I am very excited to jump into this topic with you today. It's a topic that I know very little to nothing about, so I know I'm going to personally have a lot of questions for you. But before we begin, can you tell the audience a little bit more about you and how you help people?
Sure. Thank you, Destiny, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm always happy to share my upcycling message to the world. I started, many years ago now, like 25 years ago, I trained as a fashion designer in my home country, Argentina. And through my career, I got to travel to Europe and Asia, and I finally settled here in New Zealand, where I'm based. And working in the fashion industry, I started in the 90s. I got to see a lot of things that, inherent to the fashion industry that they shocked me, unethical treatment of, the workers, very unsustainable practices when it came to the way they dyed and they colored the fabrics and the processes in general that they were, using in the fashion industry. So I started back here in New Zealand. I did a master's degree in fine arts, and I ended up in the academic world. And I decided that I would devote my professional life to researching more ethical and sustainable ways to, create fashion and design fabrics and so on. So I started researching natural dyeing and eco-printing as ways to achieve this. And that's how I got started into, gathering, trees and plants and flowers that I had around me here in New Zealand and researching other natural dyes that, were abroad. And I started creating these beautiful color palettes, all naturally based on silks, on cottons, on wool, fabrics, and yarns. And I started teaching and spreading this message in the fashion degree that I was teaching. And I was actually teaching fashion sustainability at the time. And fast forward a few years, then I decided to start community workshops to spread this message a little bit further. And then the pandemic came. So I took all of this online, and here we are now, 2 years on. I started La Creative Mama blog, and now I devote my time full time to teaching anyone who is interested. I call them my creative mamas because they're usually women and they're super creative that come to me. And I teach them how to do eco-printing on fabrics, which is botanical prints on fabrics, how to use plants, leaves, flowers, barks to create solid colors on yarns, and how to upcycle fabrics and clothes that they might already have, doing all these techniques. So yeah, that's kind of like the story of how I got started and where I'm at now.
Well, I definitely want to dig right in to all of this with you. And the first question I have for you, and I think I know what it is, but I'm not 100% sure. Can you walk us through what is natural dyeing and eco-printing?
Sure. Sorry, I talk like everyone knows, but yeah, not that many people know. So natural dyeing, let's start with natural dyeing. Natural dyeing is it's a way to extract the color that is inherent to certain plants. It can be, there's actually leaves, tree leaves, flowers, barks from trees, insects such as cochineal, bugs, insects. That's an insect. Foods such as onion skins, avocados, skins and stones. So there are certain natural plants and insects and that have good quality, good dyeing qualities to them. So the process of natural dyeing, it's simply extracting those dyes, which we do it in the extraction step. And once you extract that dye, you end up with a pot of liquid that is the golden liquid, because it's got color to it. And the other bit of natural dyeing is that you will prepare your fabrics appropriately. So depending on whether you're using cotton or silks or wools or linen, for example, we call it scouring and mordanting, which is simply, scouring means cleaning the fabric very, very well. So you get rid of all the, there may be some oils or some chemical treatment. So we're going to get rid of all of those. And then we're going to mordant them. And for mordanting, we use aluminum acetate and aluminum sulfate, which you can, easily get it. And all you're doing when you're mordanting is making sure that the fabric is being opened. So you're opening the fabric, and then once that fabric is open, we are going to immerse it in our dye liquid, and that's it. That's how you dye it naturally. And once that fabric is, if you prepare your fabric well and the fabric will receive the color, then that color is there to stay. It shouldn't fade. And you should be able to wash it, rinse it, chuck it in the washing machine, and that color is there to stay. It will fade like any other chemical color will fade, but and you can create beautiful reds, pinks, bright, very vibrant color. Natural dyeing doesn't mean that you're going to get beige and browns.
And that was going to be one of the questions I had for you. When you throw it in the washing machine, will all of that dye come off? But it sounds like it won't.
Well, and this is the thing, Destiny, and this is why I spend, all my time teaching these techniques, because you need to, in my blog, I teach I call it La Creative Mama Natural Dyeing Method. So it's an 8-step process. Each process needs to be done in a particular order and in a particular way. So, each step of the process. So if you follow those steps in the correct order, you guarantee really good results. But there's a caveat. You need to use certain dyes, because what typically happens is that, someone will call me and say, hey, Victoria, I followed all the steps, but I got no color. And then when I ask them, okay, but what natural dye did you use? And they would say carrots or red cabbage. I'm thinking like, well, but those are not the natural dyes that I tell you to use. Oh yeah, but that's what I had at home. So no, you can't do that. You need to use a specific process plus specific dyes, and that is what I guarantee you will get beautiful, natural, bright, long-lasting color. But it's a two thing. You need to do both things. You need to follow the process, and you need to use a set of particular dyes, which we know that will deliver you good color.
So what about eco printing? What exactly is that?
So with eco printing, it's a really beautiful practice, because you can get very good results very, very quickly. Again, you need to follow a certain, a certain process, very easy process. But all you're doing with eco printing is choosing certain flowers and certain leaves, and we're creating botanical prints, usually with eco printing. So again, you're going to prepare your fabrics appropriately. And once that fabric is ready to receive the color or the prints, all we're going to do is we're going to sandwich certain leaves and flowers in between 2 layers of fabric. And then all you need to do is roll a little bundle. So we roll these little bundles and then we tie them really tightly with string or rubber bands. And then you steam them for a good hour. And that's why, it's just so quick. And then you leave it on the steamer, and then you come back, and every time you open one of these little eco printed bundles, it's like, oh, such a joyous moment, because you really never know exactly what you're going to get. I teach a process in which you should be able to, anticipate 80%. I always say I can teach you how to anticipate 80% of the result, but 20% is a surprise. It's a surprise element to it.
So I love that. So to some extent, you're getting different designs, with each one that you do.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, and that's the thing, because when you're doing natural dyeing or eco printing, you are actually designing with nature. So for starters, you're using natural materials that are around you, which is beautiful, because like in my case, I was able to really connect with my new environment, with New Zealand, which was my new home. So I made a point of choosing the trees around. I started with the trees around my neighborhood. Then I started planting my own dye garden, which created a really nice bond between me and my new home and, my garden. But you're really designing with nature. So it's a very organic process. And, nature surprises us, right? So you really, yeah. And the other thing, Destiny, that is very important is that, say, for example, I say to you, okay, let's just make prints with eucalyptus, and you are going to get your eucalyptus, which is in your in your own neighborhood, and I use my eucalyptus, which is in my garden or my own neighborhood. And because the soil is different in each area, we're probably going to get slightly different colors from it. And that's what I love. It's just so personal and so organic and so surprising.
So Victoria, let's say that somebody wants to get started. They want to dip their toes into this natural dyeing and eco printing process that you've designed. How do they get started? Where do they go? What supplies do they need?
Yeah, well, look, the first thing to note is that it's a really easy practice, both of them, natural dyeing and eco printing. They're super easy. What it is also very, very easy is to get confused. So my suggestion is that you choose someone that knows what they're doing and you follow the process. And there's a lot of people that are currently teaching these techniques now. And the other thing is that you really don't need much to get started. The only thing you need is a few pots and pans that you shouldn't be using for cooking after you've used them for these, just for safety. So for example, for eco printing, you just need a steamer, and then you need some plastic barriers, because that's what we're going to avoid the prints going on places in the fabrics that we don't want. We need natural materials such as cotton, 100% cotton, 100% silk, 100% wool fabric. The very important thing to note is that eco printing and natural dyeing, they only work with natural fibers. So I always say to my students, you either buy the fabrics and you talk to the people that you buy them from and you know what you're buying, or if you're upcycling, for example, a t-shirt, go and check out the composition label of the t-shirt. And when in doubt, you can do a very, very easy burn test, which what you do is like you burn a little bit of the fabric, and then if the fabric has it goes in flames a little bit, right? There's a little bit of a flame and the fabric disintegrates. That means it's a natural fiber. If the fabric melts away, or the yarn melts away, it means it's synthetic. So don't spend your time. It's a waste of time doing this process, because it's just not going to take the color. So once you have those basic, and then you need a dye like flowers and leaves, or insects like cochineal, for example, insects. You follow the dyes that, and if you go to my blog, I've got lots of lists of the natural materials that you can use. But to guarantee, so the other thing that I say to my students is like, you need a little bit of a toolkit. So a few basic natural dyes that will give you color all year round. So I usually say to them, okay, just get things that you can get from your kitchen, so such as avocado and onion skins and black tea. So you can easily get that all year round. And then choose 2 or 3 things that you can get from around your neighborhood, such as an eucalyptus tree, an oak tree, maple tree, and those will give you like beautiful browns and golds and yellows. And then you can buy madder root, which will give you red, and you can buy cochineal dye, which will give you bright pink, and you can maybe buy logwood dye that will give you purple. So just without spending much money at all, you can really create a beautiful color palette all year round. So yeah, does that answer your question, Destiny?
Yeah, I mean, when you were talking about the trees, a question that kind of popped in my mind, and this might be a kind of a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Let's just say you're a maple tree or an oak tree. When the trees change colors, do you get a different color of dye?
You mean each tree has different colors? Yeah. So for example, when I talk about oak tree, the oak tree, I use the leaves mainly for eco printing. So what I do, see here in New Zealand, we're in spring. So what I'm doing at the moment, I am collecting all the oak trees, all the oak leaves that I can see on the ground. And, if an oak tree needs a little bit of a trim, there I am trimming the tree. And what I would normally do is I either use them fresh or I collect them for the winter. I put them, I make them go flat and dry them for the winter. And that leaf will give me a beautiful, depends on how the treatment that I do for eco printing, but it naturally gives me like a beautiful browny goldy print. But the oak tree has the acorns as well. So the acorns I would normally use for natural dyeing. So I would boil the acorns and it will give me a beautiful gold color. And then that gold color, again, depending on what the treatments that you do to that gold color, if you put a little bit of a modifier, for example, iron, then you turn that gold color into dark charcoal gray. But normally your oak tree in the United States and my oak tree in New Zealand will give us really consistent similar results. Whilst if I'm using, I don't have maple trees here in New Zealand, but if I'm using eucalyptus, for example, eucalyptus gives me a totally different color and result from the oak trees. Eucalyptus gives me more of a gold red color. If I print it and if I naturally dye with eucalyptus, it gives me like a bright yellow.
Okay. So Victoria, let me ask you this. If somebody is ready to get started, I think you have a free gift for them. Can you tell them where they can go and what they can get at your website too? I know you have a ton of resources there.
Yes, so you can if you go onto my website, you can read the ultimate guide to natural dyeing, and I explain the step-by-step process of natural dyeing. And there's also guides about eco printing, but I also have two really nice gifts. So one is a free natural dyeing guide, and that is it's a printable little guide that you can download. So you get all the 8 steps that I teach, and I explain why and how to do them. And you can also get a list of the best 30 best leaves and plants to start your journey with eco printing. So that's my message today. Follow the process, but make sure that you're choosing the right natural dyes, whether for eco printing or natural dyeing. Otherwise, it is a bit of a waste of time.
And we will make sure that those links are in the show notes so everybody knows exactly where to go for your website and for the free gifts that you have for them.
That's great. That's great.
And thank you so much, Victoria, for sharing all of these wonderful tips and tricks for us. I loved learning more about natural dyeing and eco printing with you.
Oh, thank you so much for having Destiny and for spreading this really cool way of upcycling and making the most of what we already have around us.
Thanks, Victoria.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening today. Don't forget to sign up for the waitlist so you'll be the first to know when our next free Hobby School online learning summit launches. The link is in the show notes for this episode, or you can go to hobbyschool.com, and that's Hobby School with school without an H in it. Talk soon.